Van Selected.
Welcome to the Brian P. Swift All Things Inspirational Show. Brian is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and success coach. Are you ready to move your vision forward and be inspired every Wednesday a little afternoon? Here is your host, Brian P. Swift.
Welcome. Thank you for listening to the show. This is Brian P. Swift, a.k.a. the Quadfather. And yes, it's Wednesday. It's hump day. Welcome to the Inspiration Location. I appreciate you joining in and listening. Please feel free to share the station. For those of you working today, God bless. Thank you for going out and trudging through this weather. Growing up in the 60s, I remember many storms like this. A lot of fond memories. Remember, put those bread bags underneath your boots so you can slip them on and off very easily. A lot of people may not get that, but back in the day, you looked for those plastic bags to slip on so those feet could get wedged in the boot and you didn't get wet. So a lot of good memories, but thank you again for showing up. Sit back and enjoy. Remember, feel free to send messages, to send questions if you have any ideas of what you'd like talked about on the show or a topic. And as you know, I always like starting the show with either a quote or something that makes you think. And today is, why do people stop fighting? Why do people stop fighting? And my answer to that is people don't stop fighting until, and it's that until. So you don't stop fighting because you get old. You get old because you stop fighting. And that's the truth of it. We stop fighting because of our minds more than we do our bodies. Let's face it, when a person loses their drive and loses their hunger to be in that fight, whatever that fight may be, their fight for success, their fight for their family, the fight for doing what's right, the fight to chase down their dreams, you inevitably stop growing and you lose that edge. And the hardest thing for you to do is to bring back that hunger, that drive, that edge. Trust me, I've been in a wheelchair 40 years. I have to bring back that hunger, that drive, that edge every time I get out of bed. I have to bring that back sometimes several times throughout the day when I'm battling certain things. And I'll tell you, for one thing that's certain, it is worth a fight. But my fight's worth it because I continue to have goals. I continue to have dreams, and those things I will chase, because it's going to take everything you have in you and then some to continue to fight for those things you want. And again, that could be whether that's saving for a new car, whether it's to move into a different house, whether it's for that job you want, whether it's for something that's right in your life, in your children's life. And we have to constantly face and find that courage, that drive, that fire that we had deep inside of us at one point. And maybe that point wasn't that long ago. Maybe it was. But we need that to keep going day to day, because every day that fire gets stepped on, that drive slows up, and we just get complacent. So we need to continue to find that. And that's not easy. And in no way am I making it appear easy or sound easy, but it is what it is, and you have to find ways to do that. After we hear from our guest in a little bit, I will talk about some ways to find that. But before that, I would like to tell you, if your business would like to be on this fantastic show every Wednesday, contact Brian Swift at bswift62@comcast.net. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you have a business, if you're an entrepreneur and you'd like to sponsor the show, please reach out to me. We're always looking to help those, especially local to our community, because I think we have an amazing, strong community here. And I think the community supports each other. And I see it all throughout, whether that be in Joliet, whether that be in Plainfield, whether that be in Frankfort, Mokina. I mean, I could keep going. The community around here is strong, and we do support each other. And what we're going to do is we're going to hear a little bit of word from our sponsor, and then we're going to meet Coach T. And I'll tell you a little bit about Coach T when we get back. But now a word from our sponsor. Welcome back to the Inspiration Location, and I'd like to welcome our guest. I'm going to call him Coach T. You will hear why I call him Coach T in a minute. But Coach T, welcome to the Inspiration Location.
Quadfather, great to be back on WJOL. I'm a graduate of Lewis University. Go Flyers! So WJOL was on the radio an awful lot in the dorm room. So it's great to be on JOL, and it's great to hear your voice, sir.
Well, thank you. And the reason I call you Coach T, much like the coach of Duke, his last name is a little bit complicated, and your last name is Tomaskevich, and I have known that name for a long time. I don't know if I can still spell it correctly, but you are warmly known as Coach T, much like the coach from Duke. They don't dare try to pronounce his name because they don't want to get it incorrect.
Well, you make a good point, and being from the South, being a South Side Pole, definitely want to make sure we get the name right. Tomaskevich, you pronounced it correctly and excellently, sir.
Well, thank you. So let me just throw out who Coach T is. You've coached sports from the ground level up. I mean, you started where most coaches start at a grammar school level. I know you coached basketball. You've coached other things. You've been involved with football. You've coached and been around the coaching world for quite a few years. The difference is, even through college, I mean, you were friends with, some coaches that, have coached at DePaul, and you've been a part of their journey. You've actually worked your way up to coaching at the collegiate level, which is something I have dreamed of, something many of us have dreamed of. So thank you. So congratulations, I should say, for working your way from that such small level, but a very impactful level, to coaching at a amazing school in New York, Sonny Oberskill. And you are not just a coach, but you're also the sports information director and the head cross-country coach. Am I correct?
Yes, you are very much correct. I've been very fortunate in my career, and my degree is actually my undergraduate is in journalism, mass comm. So I'm actually one of those people who uses their college degree, on a daily basis. Was very fortunate, your program, which is called the Inspirational Hour. One of my great inspirations, there were a couple about it. Lewis, one, the recently, passed, departed athletic director Paul Ruddy, who was a Joliet legend and a Joliet Catholic alum, and the Chuck Schwarz, who has just recently passed away, who was for many years the head basketball coach and assistant athletic director at Lewis, and those two men put me on the path that I entered, and I started at the elementary school level back in the 80s, so I guess I've been around for a long time now, and I've coached 3 sports at the collegiate level, and just have been very blessed in that fact, my friend. So it's been a long, strange trip sometimes, but it's a very enjoyable way to make a living.
Awesome. And we also lost, and I don't know if you're aware of this, being in New York, we also lost a great man who dedicated himself and made a difference in so many people's life, Coach Barry Shaw, who coached at St. Lawrence and coached at St. Xavier and made such a big difference. And it's such a loss when we lose these coaches because they're not just coaches. I mean, you're not just a coach. And it's going to bring me to a topic. You've coached three sports at a collegiate level. I would be blessed to be able to coach one sport. And you call it blessed. And I do believe you are blessed, and I know you do. But it doesn't, being blessed, kind of like having good luck, kind of comes with a price. I mean, you've put in hours doing things that others may not want to have done. You've put in hours and hours in sleepless nights worrying and being not just a coach to your players / athletes / students. What you've had to do is you've also had to be a mentor. You've also had to be a guidance counselor. You've been almost a pseudo parents to a lot of these kids for probably the first time are outside of their parents, still growing. I mean, at the collegiate level, you go to college and 18 years old, some 17, and it's your first experience. And we know it all, but you've had to be a lot of things to a lot of people. Can you talk to that?
Well, Sweetie, I think that's missed at in a lot of situations. I work at a Division III school, which is a non-scholarship school, and we are out in the we're not in the metropolitan area by any stretch of the imagination. We are in more of a rural community. So, what you make an excellent point. Many times we are coaching young people who are for the first time in their lives away from home there, and sometimes you have to provide a little bit of guidance and a little bit of structure and help them along in a number of different ways. And you are right, we do function in loco parentis sometimes. There you go, use a legal term for you. But it is very, very important that, we help the transition. Sometimes people ask me, well, what's the biggest difference between high school and college and for an athlete? And, in high school, your day is pretty structured. You start school at a certain, time. A lot of times mom and dad get you up at the same time every morning to either catch the school bus, walk, or take the car or get dropped off at school. You come back, practices at a set time every day. You go home at a set time. You have your routines. In college, because of class schedules, labs, field trips, etc., it's communal living, so it's a lot different. So a lot of what I think a lot of us at the college level, be it the scholarship or non-scholarship level, there are coaches, we're trying to help the initial transition. And I think that is just a vital part of the process. We talk about a lot of things in our program, and one of the things we talk about is, you've got to develop the ability to adjust, because you might have an 8 a.m. or a 9 a.m. class 3 days a week. Then you might not be in class till 11 o'clock in the morning a couple of times. You may have an evening class or an afternoon lab. And, we practice at our level, Godfather, we practice at either 6 a.m. in the morning or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you've got to stay on top of things. And, part of the responsibility of a college coach, especially a small college coach, is to make sure people are moving in the right direction and getting to be where they need to be. And it's not always perfect, but isn't that the essence of, what a leader has to do? You've been a sales manager. There are people in, politicians, clergy, the military. We're all working with people, and we're all trying to blend a cohesive environment for whatever group we're working on. And sometimes, that requires many different leadership styles, and you perform a number of different roles. So, it's never boring, is what I like to say.
No, a lot of great insights, Coach T, and I think that here's an important one, and you're right. We go from more structure than we realize, especially as a teen. I mean, for most kids, they come home and hopefully there is a fridge full of food or enough food to get them through the day. And I know where we live, most kids are probably blessed to have laundry done and have a lot of things at their fingertips, support. But when you go away to college, most of that disappears because on your end, you're not getting top athletes dropped off at you, especially because you're a non-scholarship. So you have to not just develop their athletic skills and the fact that they're going from maybe being a big fish in a little pond to now going to be a little fish in a big pond. And that's a huge transition for anyone, whether you're a young adult or a full-blown adult. That's a big transition, and I'm sure a lot of that falls on you as a coach.
Yes. It's interesting that you bring that point up. Big fish in a small pond, as opposed to sometimes you're a small fish in a big pond, and then you come and are able to, maybe show a few of your athletic gifts at a different level of competition or what have you. A lot of times we as college coaches, we sit in an office with someone and they're frustrated by performance. And, I think what you have to impress upon them is even though, you're in season a short period of time, you're really making a year-round commitment to your sport, your education, etc. And sometimes in a high school situation, you might be done with your sport and move to another sport or in another phase of your life the minute that season is over. Well, great athletes are made in the off season. So if it's the commitment, like how we tell kids, the commitment is made year round. We expect, in distance.
That's a great point.
Yeah. In distance running, you can't take the summer off because, the minute, our outdoor track and field season is over, our distance runners take a week or so off, and then right away they're starting to train for the fall. At least the good ones are. The great ones find a way to train and, work it in between summer jobs and et cetera. I think that
we're seeing that at the high school levels even.
Yes, I think that's part of, you talk about inspiration and motivation. I think that's part of our responsibility as coaches. And there's many different ways you can inspire or motivate someone to maximize their potential. We talk about successful athletes are athletes who embrace a lifestyle. You have to watch the diet to an extent. Sleep is, I think, an underrated portion of performance. You have to talk to kids about good habits. And, that gets to be at times a very difficult sell job. And I think that, you have to point those things out to young people and say, look, we can only do so much for you in season or when you get here. We need you to commit, and even at the non-scholarship level, because I've seen some great athletes at the non-scholarship level, it is vital that you commit and be dedicated to your craft, your sport, and your education, because let's face it, every institution and every level of competition has eligibility requirements. First rule, if you're not eligible, you can't compete. And I think that's, I spend probably a lot of time helping kids, find ways that they can maximize their academic performance as well as their athletic performance. And that's part of the job. And I think that it's vital that you try to point out to these young people, look, at the end of 4 or 5 years, you're going to be making your way in the world. And hopefully we can give you some tools that will help ease that transition. Because the transition between elementary school and high school is large for an athlete. The transition between high school and college, or high school, junior college, that is another level altogether. But probably the toughest transition you're going to make is when you leave the realm of academia and move into life. and that, hopefully you've put in all this time. So, my great Coach, line to kids when we recruit them, very simple. We want you to make the most of this experience so it gives you the tools to move on. So when you're 30, you're not on your parents' couch in the basement. And I think that's, a very big part of the whole athletic process. It teaches you the things outside the classroom that books don't cover.
Well, you're 100% right. And I think some of it has gotten lost because of how the hype around athletics and sports. And trust me, you played sports at competitive levels, and I played, whether it be on a team or in a group or at certain levels. The hype it gets now is unbelievably amazing, and I think some of that loss that gets lost is the fact that, as you said, in 4 or 5 years, you really got to go out there and stand tall. And you know what? There's a lot of great lessons you learn through athletics, and a lot of great lessons coaches like yourself teach these young men and women. And that being said, I'm going to ask you a question. So I have 2 kids, not personal kids. One of them is, I have a son that is leaving junior college and heading off to Arizona to go to school. And I have a nephew, Gavin, who is leaving high school and going to be playing baseball at a very nice college in Wisconsin. What advice do you have for these kids that are leaving junior college or leaving high school? What is specific advice, what couple minutes can you tell them, or their parents listening, what advice would you give them now? Something they could do now, let's just say almost a semester before you leave. What can they start to do now, not just in their sport, but to prepare for going away out of state and dealing with everything that comes with that you see at your level?
It's interesting. Discipline, self-discipline plays a big part in success. I saw something online the other day, a while back, and it was one of the members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a retired naval admiral. He said, start the day by making your bed, because then you've accomplished something when the day starts. It's a lot of little things like that are important. Be committed to, when you show up as a college athlete and a college student, be committed to things that will take you where you want to go. If your one nephew who's going to be a college baseball player, don't show up for fall ball 20 pounds overweight. Make sure that you've committed to a training regimen that when you show up, you're in condition to go through a fall season. Once again, make sure you are playing over the summer, because let's face it, you're going to be in competition with other people who want the at-bats and the playing time. Yeah. And from an academic standpoint, I don't think you can just put the books away all summer anymore, or the computer away all summer. I think you have to do some things, that keep the brain stimulated, the mind stimulated. We all love the summer. It's great to sit out in the sun, and you and I did that, of course, and maybe you have a little bit of fun. But the key is to be prepared when you hit campus, to hit campus running. And then I think the other thing is as you move into a higher level of academia and a higher level of competition, I think you have the chance to reinvent yourself. You don't have to be content to sit on the bench. But and I've heard you on the program talk about grinding it out, grit. Well, you have to be willing to work. And I think sometimes, in high school, where you may be one of the best athletes or one of the best players in your particular sport, you might not have had to work as hard as the kid who was a reserve in a more elite program, someone who's come with better work habits. sometimes you think you're working hard in the classroom or in your sport, and maybe you're not working hard enough. You have to look at perspective.
Yeah, Coach, that's a great point, because we don't know what we don't know. So if I think I'm working hard, I may be working hard compared to my few guys around me that I know and a couple of kids I play ball with. But as we've both done, I coach travel teams. You've been a part and you've seen it on your sport when you've helped elite coaches coach college camps. The level of grinding it out at your summer camps when you were coaching with elite coaches and helping them with their summer camps is way different than grinding it out at the high school level.
You know, you made a point several shows back, going back to your sales manager days, and you would show people, the people who made 100 calls a day were more successful than those that made 30 calls a day. And that plays into it, because sometimes you think, well, I made 40 calls today. I worked hard. But the guy or gal who made 100 calls did more business. And I think that, you know, effort is the key in a lot of things. You know, the effort you put in or the ability to go around. And you know, one of the other points that you made on the show a few weeks back, you say, I listened to the show, Godfather. I listened to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The word.
Well, no, and let's hope that the advertisers pick up on that, okay? But you made an excellent point. If you don't have resources, you must be resourceful. You know, if you don't have, you know, a great area to train in, you may have to find a way to say you don't have access to great weight training equipment. Well, you know, push-ups and crunches and isometric exercises and Pilates have been around for years, you know, and there are plenty of places you can run to condition. You know, you have to find a way. You can't just say, oh, woe is me. You know, I don't have what other people have. Well, that's probably true.
Be resourceful.
But in the final analysis, when you look at everything and you break it all down, you may be absolutely correct, but now you've got to compete against these people. How are you going to do that? You know, in an academic vein, you may not have come from a school that had the best technology. That might require you to put in more time on the back end than maybe some other people. And you just have to decide where your priorities lie. And I think that's what we try in our program. We try to tell people, look, you're going to be as successful as the work you put in. The other thing is, don't let other people define you. You know, define yourself. Create your own destiny. Folks, I've known the Quadfather for many years, and you've read his story, etc. He went through a tremendous experience in terms of literally being a quadriplegic. One of the first things he said was, when he looked at the doctor, what's next? The ability to move on and leave the past behind is sometimes one of the greatest skills or things we have. You can't live in the past. You can visit once in a while, but you can't live there. You must live in the present and plan for the future. And I think that's one of the things we try to emphasize. And, you know, I don't think I'm the only coach who ever talks in terms of that.
Coach T, awesome words of wisdom. Thank you for the kind words. And I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that you have won championships. I mean, you're not just coaching kids, and I don't care at what level. I don't care if it's Division 1, 2, 3, 4, NAIA, NHSA, whatever it is. You've won numerous championships. So that being said, and I know it would take numerous shows to get through it, this is a question that I would ask anybody did you those championship years? So you're not getting scholarship athletes. So you're not getting great athletes dropped at your doorstep because they're on scholarship, and now you get to do some molding and plunk them in. You're not getting those kind of athletes. So what did you do, or what did you do that you could think of that was different those championship years that might have been different than other years? Is there something you did? Is there a way you brought the team together? Even though an individual sport, how did you bring them together? Was there something you did different with those championship years?
That's a really good question. You talk about the caliber of athlete that you get. Well, sometimes you do get a great athlete, and sometimes, this past year, our Fighting Tiger men's cross country team won our conference championship, placed sixth in our NCAA regional, which was our highest finish out. And we did have athletes that I think some bigger schools missed on. We had 3 all-regional runners this year, and I think 2 of them are, all 3 of those young men are quality young men, and they're excellent. They're excellent. I think as I look back on, and folks, I've coached 19 conference championship teams, men's and women's, and I think sometimes you look at each team and where there were some years, Quadfather, we were the favorite to win, and the touch had to,
Okay.
I always like to joke, I know how to drive a fast car. Can you drive a slow one? And sometimes It was a case of, of being very analytical, being very supportive. You know what I mean? Then maybe earlier in my career when we were fortunate to win a little bit, maybe we weren't as talented as some of the other teams we competed against, and maybe I was a little more demonstrative. I think it's situational. And I think it's situational sometimes based on where you are personally as a leader in your life. And I'd like to think, this past year, I don't want to say it was an easy year, but it was more about the process. It was more about design workouts. It was more about designing workouts and paying attention to logistics and all the other good stuff. It was a very self-motivated and self-directed group of young people. And that,
but
that makes things easy.
Even that being said, when you get a high-performing athlete, it's your job to take them higher, to get more out of them. You know what I mean? So even though, this year you got a couple, maybe athletes that some other teams missed out on, you still have to take them
you have to motivate people.
Oh, yeah.
You do have to motivate people. And I think that, making sure that you put little things, Michael Jordan always used to try to self-motivate. He used to use little things, to bring out performance. We like to do things, in terms of every week when we're getting ready to travel, we give out an itinerary. We look at motivational sayings. It's interesting. In a sport like distance running, one of our athletes had a great line. Coach, you can't hide from somebody on a 10-mile run. You learn about someone's character. You learn about someone. And I think college athletes, we spend so much time together. Many years ago, I was coaching a team that was not favored to win a conference title. We had a young lady who was not a very competitive person, I'll be very honest, run the race of her life to give us the victory. And I joked with her afterwards. I said, Kendra, you always said you weren't that competitive. And she said, Coach, yeah, I'm not, but how do you let your friends down? And that's a powerful statement. We're all motivated in life for different things. If my father and your father had families, they worked very hard. They were motivated to get up even when they didn't want to work hard because you had to put food on the table. And, sometimes fear is a great motivator. Sometimes glory is a great motivator. Money is always a pretty good motivator, but what have you. So I think what I think we look at with individuals, and you hit the nail right on the head. In modern times, I think a coach has to find what buttons you have to push, where you have to go,
Awesome.
and it's the same with people who are officers in the military, people who are in the clergy, leading congregations, sales managers, corporate executives. Everybody's trying to get maximum performance out of their people. And I think one thing that I have found overall time is being upfront and being authentic with young people is the most important thing, because here's the deal. You can't con everybody 24/7. You have to be authentic. People have to know that they might not always agree with your style of leadership, but they have to know that you're working for their best interests. I think that maximizes performance.
Yeah, and like the saying goes, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And you do have to show that first. And Coach T, we could talk about being authentic and all these topics the entire show again, which we look forward to having you on again. And
I hope so.
I appreciate your. We're gonna, because you brought up some topics that are just, we could talk a 3-hour show and not even touch on all of them. Just from inspiration to motivation to being authentic. All the things you talked about. So it is truly, truly, truly my pleasure to have you on. I love your insights. I hope your athletes realize what a resource you are to them. And not just your athletes, but the college you work for and the people running the college. I hope they realize what an amazing resource you have, because, as you said, we've known each other and you are authentic. And you work for the right reasons, and you go beyond what is asked of you, and you can't get people to show up today, let alone do those things. So I hope your athletes realize the ask they have in you as a coach. I hope the university understands the asset they have in you for all the things that you do, and I hope they utilize you as much as they can, because they're missing it if they don't. And I say that with all sincerity, not because we know each other, and those who know me know I don't pay out compliments lightly and rarely. So I say that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. You have a great day. Probably snowed in like we are. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and then I'll be back to talk about why people stop fighting and how you need to drive yourself to keep fighting, to keep going after that vision, and to keep growing. So, Coach T, God bless. Have a good one. And now a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to the Inspiration Location. This is Brian P. Swift, a.k.a. the Quad Father. I hope you got some awesome tips, Coach T. So many great things we could talk about. But as we started the show, we talked about you don't stop fighting because you get old. You get old because you stop fighting. And when people lose their drive and hunger to be in that fight, because it will inevitably, we will stop growing. We will lose some of that fire. What do we do to keep that edge? What do we do to keep that fire? And I have some tips for you. And the first one is get comfortable being uncomfortable. I believe the more comfortable you get, the more comfortable you receive, which ultimately kills a bit of that fire, a bit of that drive. Resistance makes you stronger. You have to continue to know your why. That why is so important, because we will all hit a wall. We will all trip. We will all be forced to use our muscle, our minds, our strength, our fire. And that causes us to grow. It causes us to be uncomfortable. So getting uncomfortable is part of the process of continually keeping that fear, that drive, that resistance going. So get comfortable being uncomfortable. I believe it's a major part of the process. It's hard to get that fight back in you, but if you keep it stoked doing those things, I believe you will always have that spark in you. So the second thing is fear is always a part of the growth equation. There's always going to be fear. People who accomplish greatness use fear to fuel themselves. You heard Coach T talk about fear is a great motivator. And personally, I've said, if your vision, if your goals don't scare you, you're not thinking big enough. Anytime your vision is so great, so big, so uncomfortable that you need to sun this fire deep inside of you, when your vision is beyond you, it opens up a place. It surrounds you like a warrior. That vision has got to be there. That fear has got to be there. I think to be successful in any endeavor, you have to put yourself out there. You have to put yourself in harm's way. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you're a coach. It doesn't matter if you're a parent. You've got to put it out there, and you've got to have some type of fear. So, number 3, when you're in the fight, you can't stop throwing punches. When you're in a battle, when you're striving for goals, when you've been knocked down, when you feel down, you can't stop punching. When you get punched in the face, and you will fall, and you will drop to your knees, you've got to learn how to rise up. You've got to learn how to turn that fear into fuel. I actually wrote a book called Getting Up is the Key to Life. You can find it on Amazon, and it's exactly what it talks about. It talks a little bit about my journey, but it talks about getting knocked down and learning how to get back up. And there's a second book that came out 2 years ago called Rising Up, and it is very similar, but it gives you different insights into how to rise up, how to deal with the punches, how to keep throwing punches, and continue to fight. Number 4, fight for something bigger than you. I think this is very critical. Maybe it's a maturity thing or an age thing, but when you're fighting for something greater than you, you fight differently. I believe that, like a bear fighting for its cubs, like a lion, like a parent fighting to protect their children. Getting in that fight, staying in that fight is easy because it's for something bigger than you. You're a parent fighting for their kids. You watch a bear fight for cubs. You just fight different. It's that, you either finish or you die trying, but giving up is not an option type of fuel that opens up in you. That is so key to fighting that fight that's bigger than you. And the last thing is, warriors die, but kings last forever. May sound a little cliche, but a warrior wants to fight for himself. A king fights for others. He fights for the glory of a bigger cause. That's why warriors die, but king's glory will last forever, because a warrior wants to prove to the world that he is somebody. A king knows who he is. Go out there and be a king. And size doesn't matter. If size mattered, why is an elephant the king of the jungle? He's not. The lion is the king of the jungle. And he doesn't always have to roar. And in that fight, there's only one opponent, and that is the person you see in the mirror. That's all that matters. That's in that process, in that fight. What matters is who you become in this process of fighting. And trust me, you can become the king. You can become a king. Whether you get knocked down or not, become that king. And remember, it's never too late to unlock that code to that edge. It's never too late to get in the best shape of your life. It's never too late to fight those hard battles, because the hardest battles have the sweatiest victories. I am the Quad Father. This is the Inspiration Location. Thank you so much for listening. Be safe out there today. God bless and have a great day. Thank you.